The question that leaves is, well, what does he think that Peter Mandelson should do? And I don't think it will be possible to shake off the legacy of Mandelson, who is so closely, in all those years you referred to, I've been covering Peter Mandelson since before 1997, so I've got the kind of pre-sequel as well as the entire box set in terms of Peter Mandelson coverage. And he, until very recently, the fact that he was sent to Washington, there were different views about that. The Foreign Office didn't want it. Others close to the Prime Minister didn't want it, but it happened, shows that he has been very close. So yes, I think that question, I'm not one of those people who says, well, it was, early in a Monday morning when we were recording. By now, the Prime Minister should have withdrawn membership of the Labour Party from Peter Mandelson on top of everything else. But I think he is still in the firing line in terms of, well, what does he really intend to do about this? Because Peter Mandelson remains a Lord, etc. It's an odd situation in which someone who was so close to you then turns out to have been so damaging. What does the Prime Minister think should happen next?
Yeah, and on that, he can't be stripped of his peerage without primary legislation.
Indeed.
And McElvoy, very good to get your thoughts. And that episode of Politics at Sam and Anne's, recorded very early, I'm sure, is out now. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you.
Well, let's go to Westminster because our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman, joins us live now. And Henry, just talk us through the fallout of all of this. As we were saying there, discussing with Anne, who's been following his career for so many years, this is somebody who is very much at the forefront of the architecture of New Labour, a blow for Sir Keir Starmer, no doubt, and critics saying that potentially he should have got in first, telling him to resign.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a blow for Sir Keir Starmer in the sense that actually it removes from him a difficult issue that he would have been confronted with this morning. Lord Mandelson has made the decision for himself to leave the Labour Party. I think that was probably a political decision that Keir Starmer was going to have to get to as these revelations over the weekend spiralled. But you're absolutely right. It is a big deal, and I think probably quite a deep emotional blow to Lord Mandelson. This is a man who, as you say, was at the heart of the New Labour project, a senior cabinet minister under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, the sort of third man in the New Labour project. But his heritage in the Labour Party is much deeper than that. He worked for Neil Kinnock as Director of Communications. As a child, he was a close family friend of Harold Wilson, the Labour Prime Minister in the 60s and 70s. His grandfather, his mother's father, Herbert Morrison, was Deputy Leader of the Labour Party when Clement Attlee was Prime Minister in the 1950s and was a minister in the first ever Labour government led by Ramsay MacDonald. So this is a man whose entire life, not just his adult life, his entire life has been intertwined with the Labour Party. So it says a lot that he saw that the writing was on the wall and that he had to quit it.
And so what next? Because, of course, we also heard Sir Keir Starmer come out and talk about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. What next with this whole saga that just doesn't seem to end?
Well, look, I don't know. I don't know if there are going to be more files that are released. I think it certainly came as a surprise to some people in the UK that these files were released at the weekend. So I don't know if there'll be future files that might be released and might or might not contain revelations about Peter Mandelson or indeed other British political figures or British figures more generally. Then, in terms of Lord Mandelson himself, I think, as you were saying there with Anne, I would discount the idea that his title might be removed. That's extremely hard to do, and it hasn't happened to, in some cases, convicted criminals. So I don't think that's going to happen here. But I do think, his time in public life is over. However, if you think about occasions in which we might hear from him, sorry, there's the possibility that he could be called to testify before the US Congress.
OK, Henry, as always, we'll let you get some water. I know you've been doing a lot of talking on a busy day, as always, a busy start to Monday. Henry Zeffman there, our chief political correspondent. We have a live page. We'll keep you up to date of any of the very latest developments. Now, another important story. Palestinians have started to enter the Rafah border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, which has largely been kept closed for the past 2 years after Israeli forces captured the Gazan side, while opening it as part of the second stage of President Trump's peace plan for Gaza. But Israel says that only Palestinians who left Gaza during the war will be allowed back in. We're monitoring the live images from the Israel-Gaza border. Israeli reports saying that each day only 50 patients who can travel, 2 relatives will be allowed to exit, and 50 people who left Gaza during the war can return. The crossing is to be run by the European Union supervisors and local Palestinian staffs. Israel will be able to carry out remote security checks. We're continuing to monitor the scene live in Gaza City itself. Thousands of sick and wounded Palestinians currently waiting to leave Gaza for treatment. So as we monitor those live images, let's cross over to Jerusalem. Our Middle East correspondent, my colleague Yolande Knell, joins us. And Yolande, important just to stress the numbers when it comes to this reopening of the crossing.
Definitely. And that's why, there's been such kind of hope and relief expressed by Palestinians who see this Rafah border crossing, the only crossing from the Gaza Strip that leads away from Israel, goes into Egypt. They see it as their gateway to the world, a lifeline for people. And you've got about 20,000 Palestinians who are sick and wounded who are waiting to leave for urgent medical treatment. That's according to local doctors and the World Health Organization. And at the same time, about 30,000 Palestinians who we're told have registered with the Palestinian embassy in Cairo to go back into the Gaza Strip. These are people who left during the course of the war, some of them for medical treatment. They want to go back for the purposes of family reunification. But just look, dozens of people, according to reports, are all that are going to be allowed through each day. And so, according to the figures that are out there, it will take until late next year for all the people who want to go back to Gaza to be able to do so. And that's been a cause of frustration for many Palestinians, along with the fact that at the moment the Rafah crossing is not being opened for humanitarian aid to go directly into Gaza. Any aid going from Egypt will still have to cross through the Israeli security checks at the Kerem Shalom Israeli border crossing right down in the southern part of the Gaza Strip.
And Yolande, just in terms of who will be monitoring this border crossing, just talk us through the security aspect of that.
So there is a European Union monitors group, which is called EUBAM, this mission. That has been reinstated at the border crossing. It was used there in the past as a mechanism working alongside local Palestinians. The stamps that people get to go in and out will be from the Palestinian Authority, which is, of course, the entity which runs parts of the occupied West Bank. Israel has been so clear that it doesn't want the Palestinian Authority to have a role in the future governance of Gaza. But you will have Israeli security checks that will take place. There's a checkpoint, especially for those going into Gaza, where facial recognition software will be used to check the identities of those going in, because everyone will need in advance both clearance, security clearance from the Egyptians and the Israelis to pass through this crossing.
Yolande, as always, thank you so much for talking us through all of the different aspects. Thank you. Yolande Knell, they're joining us live from Jerusalem. We're going to be bringing you up to date on the situation in Iran in just a moment, but we're going to take a short break right now. Around the world, across the UK, you are with BBC News. Hello, welcome back. You're with BBC News. Iran says that a framework for negotiations with the United States could be finalised in the coming days. Well, it comes as the Iranian Foreign Ministry confirmed that details of various diplomatic processes to manage tensions with the US are being examined by his country. President Trump says that hopefully they'll make a deal with Iran as the threat of a major US attack remains. It's been revealed that top US and Israeli generals met at the Pentagon before the weekend to discuss the crisis. Well, at the same time, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has warned that if the US does attack, it will lead to a regional war. Well, let's cross over to Doha because my colleague Barbara Pletasher joins us from there. So it feels like a little bit of progress is made, Barbara, a little bit of the rhetoric being talked down, but still lots of tension.
Yes, that's right, Kaisha. We've switched to the diplomatic track, it seems, to see what can come out of it. Of course, with that massive military buildup in the Arab Gulf as a pressure to try to focus people's minds. What are these negotiations going to be about? Well, they're not related anymore to the crackdown on the protesters last month, which is what triggered President Trump's warning of a military intervention. Now that urgency has passed because the protests were massively repressed, and they are returning now to discussions about Iran's nuclear program. And both sides have indicated they'd like to get a deal on preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. The Iranian foreign minister is saying, well, if that's what we want to talk about, we can do that because we're not interested in getting a weapon. We've always said that. They've never said why they are, in fact, enriching uranium to nearly bomb-grade levels. But so you know that the suspicions or the assumptions of Western countries and especially the United States. But this is familiar territory. They've discussed the nuclear program before. What's different this time is that the Americans are also talking about some things that are really red lines for the Iranians. They want to stop enrichment altogether. They also want to put limits on the number of ballistic missiles the Iranians would produce, and that is really problematic for Iran because that's its main defense, the core of its defense system, and it's feeling very threatened, especially at the moment. And they've made clear that that is just not up for talk. So we'll see what about the content that when they come together, if they come together, how they'll deal with that content. But in terms of the format, as you said, the spokesperson for the Foreign Ministry has said they're discussing the details through mediators, through regional mediators, and they expect to finalize the method and the framework in the coming days. And there are reports that regional countries, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, they're trying to organize a meeting between Iranian and U.S. officials perhaps later this week, but that's still very much up in the air.
So, Barbara Pletasher, those sticking points, uranium enrichment, ballistic missiles are going to be difficult to get over, but Iran says that should anything happen, they're ready, they're prepared.
Yes, on the one hand, the Iranians are putting a lot of effort into this diplomacy in the sense that they're in a lot of contact with regional players to try to prevent a U.S. strike and get this diplomatic path going. On the other side, they continue with quite harsh and severe warnings about what would happen if that strike took place. So you quoted there the Ayatollah Khamenei saying that it would lead to a regional war. Well, other Iranian officials have said that as well. People in the region think it could possibly also lead to regional instability as well. So you're getting the Iranian officials at every level saying, if you do strike, you better think twice because we're going to be ready with a swift and harsh response. So both of those things are going on at the same time right now.
Barbara, as always, thank you so much. Barbara Pletasher in Doha. Now, at this year's Grammys, Bad Bunny made history by scooping the Album of the Year prize. It's the first Spanish-language album ever to win the top prize on music's biggest night. Other big winners included Kendrick Lamar, Lady Gaga and Billie Eilish. And Britain's Olivia Dean was crowned Best New Artist. Well, several artists used the event to voice their opposition to President Trump's immigration crackdown. David Willis reports from LA.
A rock version of K-pop star Rosé and Bruno Mars' hit song Apatow got music's biggest night off to a dynamic start.
Kendrick Lamar!
The 26th gramophone trophy of his career for the album GNX marked the start of a history-making night for Kendrick Lamar. And barely had Olivia Dean finished performing her first UK #1, Man I Need, when she was called back.
Olivia Dean.
The 26-year-old using an emotional acceptance speech to address the thorny issue of immigration.
I'm a product of bravery, and I think those people deserve to be celebrated.
Eyes out.
The Puerto Rican artist Bad Bunny went further, condemning the actions of US immigration agents before going on to win the top award of the night, Best Album.
We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we are humans, and we are Americans.
Lola Young.
Another first-time British winner, Lola Young, could hardly contain her delight, her acceptance speech mirroring the title of her hit song.
I don't know what I'm going to say because I don't have any speech prepared. Obviously I don't, it's messy, do you know what I mean?
Cher announced the Record of the Year winner, Kendrick Lamar, only to confuse the name of the song with the name of the winner.
Oh, the Grammy goes to Luther Vandross!
Bad Bunny, debut.
But the night belonged to Bad Bunny, the first Latin artist to win Grammy's top award, and he dedicated his prize to those who'd had to leave their homeland to follow their dreams. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
We've got a full roundup of the winners of the Grammys and what they wore as well. Lots of incredible outfits. So all of that on our website. We're continuing to monitor the live shot of the Rafah border crossing because, of course, it has now reopened. Let's try and bring you that. So, yeah, the Rafah border crossing has reopened. But just to caveat that, as we were hearing from our correspondent in the Middle East, Yolande Knell, the rate of people entering is just 50 per day. And obviously many more need medical care. So just 50 people entering per day at the moment. So we're continuing to monitor that live shot. Lots more coming up here on BBC News. Hope you can stay with us.